I went to my first Edinburgh Festival in 1963 as an orchestral player. There was an orchestra which I'd been introduced to.
Edinburgh Rehearsal Orchestra.
Yes, ERO. I'd been introduced to them while I was at Felsted, which was a public school in Essex. And you're right, I got a music scholarship there. So I was playing. What I was being taught was orchestral violin, basically, and recital violin. At the same time, I was exploring, taking my first steps with guitar and ukulele and all those things, mostly guitar. But yes, the Edinburgh Rehearsal Orchestra, they would spend most of the year peripatetically going round establishments, playing at schools and sort of local arts venues. They were run by a man called Harry Legg, who was the principal viola player with the Royal Philharmonic, who got a fund of wonderful stories about Sir Thomas Beecham. But anyway, the high point of the year was always going to the Edinburgh Festival, and the way it was set up was this, that you would play through the week, you would rehearse, hence the rehearsal orchestra idea, the exact repertoire that you were going to hear played professionally that night at the Usher Hall. So it gave you a really, really good insight into the music you were about to experience in concert that evening. So you'd hear, the Scottish Symphony or the Concertgebouw, or the great orchestras of the world that came to the real Edinburgh Festival, having bought a ticket for that in advance. But during the day, you'd have played that music, not just read the score or talked about it. I mean, you literally got the insight that only comes with playing. So it's a brilliant idea. And I did that for 2 years, 1963 and 64.
Take it back just a bit, because of course you had your first groups at school at that time as well, didn't you?
Yes.
Was it Monarch Tea Biscuit or something?
Monarch Tea Biscuit. That came probably later than 63. Oh, 63 might have been in existence. I started off with I think we were called the Sinners. I think, which was sort of based on the Shadows. Really, it was instrumental. We didn't sing. Mainly because nobody got a good enough microphone. It was one of those. But yeah, we played instrumental music, and then I got to be pretty obsessed before Monarch Tea Bisque, or around the time we called it that, with basically electric blues, Chicago blues. And that brought me in contact with, I think it was sort of the Chicago blues first, and then that brought me into contact with country blues. And of course we had touring blues packages in those days. So I was avid. I would go to anything because of the way my parents would kind of take me to shows. I was always going to things. I'd go to Cambridge from school for poetry readings and things like that. I go and blues packages, and in fact I think I saw one at the Free Trade Hall in '65 once I was in Liverpool. It was your chance to see people like I don't know, Lightning Hopkins and Sleepy John Estes, and obviously Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee and all those, as well as the electric players. Yeah, obviously Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. It was just fantastic, and I loved that music. I was really, really, as so much of my generation were, powerfully affected by it. The same thing that spawned the Rolling Stones and carried everybody through, right through Peter Green and Fleetwood Mac later on. So yeah, that was quite important to me.
Was it 63 though when you?
Well, that's what we started playing at school, and the Monarch Tea Bisque thing was simply that we were trying to find something. We said, we've got to have an arresting name. We got some magazine like I can't remember what it was, a American pictorial magazine. There was an advert for two adverts. One of them for these. Or it might have been the same advert actually. There were sort of baking creations, confectionery, and they were called Monarch was the company, and they were called Tea Bisques, so T-BISK. So there were Monarch Tea Bisques, and then underneath there were these things called Cherry Pinwheel Shortcakes. So we became Monarch Tea Bisque and the Cherry Pinwheel Shortcakes. That was the name of the band. We had little cards printed up and all this, and we worked under that name. I mean, in school holidays we would try and get gigs and all that sort of thing. So that was the earliest rock and roll I played. Yeah.
But then, was it at that first Edinburgh Fringe where you went to see Yehudi Menuhin?
Yes.
Because you were completely blown away, weren't you, by the Indian music?
I'll tell you what blew me away as much as anything. Yes, I went to see Menuhin. I came away with a lifelong passion for Indian music. But that was because Menuhin, he set up a lunchtime recital. The tickets were free, but you only got a seat if you bought a program. And the programs were like £5, so it was quite a lot of money. But he brought with him Ravi Shankar and Ali Akbar Khan. So you had the best sitar, or, you know, in Western terms, the only sitar player you ever likely to hear, and the only sarod player you ever likely to hear. No tabla, just solo recitals from each of those wonderful players. So Menuhin opened the concert and played not terribly well, actually. I mean, he was all right because it was Menuhin, you know. But he then introduced his Indian friends, and the rest of the concert, and it was in a church at the, I can't remember which way is west and which is east. I would guess the west end of Princes Street.
So the sound must have been incredible.
Exactly. You know, sitar in a church, and sarod, which has got that really hard, deep-throated, heavy percussive sound to it. Just brilliant, you know. And I was absolutely blown away by this. And I would say that was probably before George Harrison, probably, that I was hearing this. I would have been absolutely sort of contemporaneous with that. So once, you know, probably a year later, I heard Norwegian wood. And I go, oh, it's this instrument called the sitar, which George has just, you know. And I thought, yeah, I know what that is, you know. I actually gave a lecture at the school I was at as a society there called the Andrews Society, which was named after a headmaster called Andrew who was killed in a car crash. And it was meant to be a sort of broad-ranging intellectual thing. And I gave a lecture on Indian music of strings and drums. That was what I called it, and illustrated it throughout with sitar music, sarod. Tabla, obviously, Alaraka, you know, the great tabla players, and just tried to kind of put my passion across to the assembled 25 or whatever they were. But I was very keen on it, and I'd already, because of this passion for Indian music, I carried it on when I got back to school after having been introduced to this in '63 at the festival. I then joined a society in Cambridge, which is an Indian music society. And carried on my kind of general little, but it was, you know, and I read books and everything. But you know, that's it must have been Christmas of '63 that my brother was and remains a doctor, although he's in his 80s now. But he trained as a doctor at Guy's Hospital, and when staff stay in hospital for 2 years, he was what they call a house surgeon, you know, so like junior doctor as they call them now. And the staff that remain in hospital, they have social events that when they're not on shift, as it were, they'll put on entertainments in the evening and all that sort of. But I was on one occasion sent out to St Thomas, which is a hospital for stomach, you know, a place where you go to have operations on your lower bowel and stuff. And I was ushered into this side ward where there was this lady, very obviously Indian and sort of draped in sari type wear, you know, but in bed. And her name was Princess Sharda Rajay of Baroda. And Sharda, everybody called her Sharda. And I sang, I don't know what for her. And she was, you know, quite delighted by that. And we started talking, and I said, I'm obsessed with Indian music, I really like it. And I obviously touched something in her, you know. So when she got out of the hospital, she got in touch, and she wanted me to chaperone, she asked me to, and I did, chaperone her daughter, who was Princess Ujwale of Baroda, who was this absolutely exquisite girl, and just look after her in London. So I was given ridiculous amounts of money and asked to show Ujwale around London and sort of just to squire her. And so I did that, and then Sharda got, she talked to Baroda University, so I met this young lad, and they offered me the chance to go and study Indian music, which I didn't do because I knew it would have taken me over. I was very passionate about it, and I just thought, that's an entire life, that's not a thing you do for 3 years, that's going to take me over forever. So I turned down the chance. Yeah. Well, I'll go with 64. I was playing with the Edinburgh Rehearsal Orchestra in 64.
I know.
Back desk of the seconds, as usual, and doing the usual thing. But on one night, I went to see a folk concert. I'd never seen folk music. I knew what it was, but I knew what it was in sort of Lonnie Donegan skiffle terms. And I went to this place called the Travis Theatre Club, which I didn't know, but it had been newly opened. And I saw two musicians, Owen Hand and Hamish Imlach, and they really again, wonderful, some original songs, but just terrific performances. I talked to them afterwards. I was a big one for going up talking to people afterwards. I remember Owen Hand saying, if you like these songs, you should get the Rebels Cayley songbook on the shelf in my room next door. There are 2 volumes of the Rebels Cayley songbook. He told me the bookshop to get them from in George Street, all the rest of it. The next year, before I even got to the Edinburgh Festival, I was in a gap year between school and university. And I did a stint clerking with a firm of solicitors in Covent Garden. Then I did another stint clerking with a barrister in Middle Temple, both of which was set up by my dad to kind of give me, because I'd decided already that I got my place at Liverpool and I was going to read law. And then, once I'd done those, I just dropped out, left home, decided to play with my band for 6 months and started living in a basement in Earl's Court, and then went and
Did you get any gigs?
Yeah, we used to have a regular gig in the Eros Club, which was, the band by then was called the Blouson Noir. In France, Teddy Boys were called Blouson Noir, or greasers, black jackets, Blouson Noir. But we were the Blues on Noir, the Blues in black. Yeah. And we played the Eros Club, which was, the entrance was slap bang on Piccadilly Circus, as it was then, when Eros was in the middle and the traffic went all the way around it. And it was, do you remember the giant Coca-Cola sign? It was dead underneath that. There was a doorway there, and that was the Eros Club. We had a Saturday night residency there. And
were you playing the standards? I mean,
no, we were playing blues. We were doing Smokestack Light. We were doing
you weren't, not your own.
No, we weren't doing original material. No. It was just blues repertoire, and it was a beat club for foreign students. That was basically the clientele. It was run by a Persian guy, Persian in those days, of course. Persia still existed. His name was Sohrab, and it was brilliant for us. And I have pictures of us on stage there. And it was a great gig, but a lot of the time we didn't have that many gigs, with the odd Mecca Ballroom and things, but I was obsessed. I was introduced by somebody that I met, and I can't for the life of me remember how we met. This guy called Nigel White, still a friend, still in touch with him, who was a wonderful cross harp player, blues harp player, real sort of Cyril Davis harp player, and he lived in Richmond, and he introduced me and the band to Eel Pie Island, which was a blues class, just brilliant. And so for about probably not much more than 9 months, but I used to go there Wednesdays and Sundays, blues nights. Well, Eel Pie Island introduced me to John Mayall, Graham Bond, Long John Baldry. Obviously visiting American players, I saw Jesse Fuller there, I saw Mae Mercer, Memphis Slim, Champion Jack Dupree, who lived in Bradford, so that hardly counted. All those great bands, the Artwoods, loved them, and my big passion was the Tridents, which was a local band, had this extraordinary lead guitarist who I later on found out was called Jeff, because it was Jeff Beck, before he joined the Yardbirds. Played with his back to the audience and played wonderful, crazy blues, sort of with a repeat echoes with a Baby Echo Benson, just fantastic, So it fed my passions mightily. But then after that, in the summer, I got this invitation, came about in a funny way, to go back to the Edinburgh Festival and actually perform at the Travis Theatre Club, which is where I'd seen the folk show the year before.
The brother
of the drummer in my band. Yes, that's right.
Max,
the drummer was called John Stafford Clark, and Max was his brother. Max was a student at Trinity College Dublin, and he first of all asked me to write a piece of music to basically a sort of intro and outro for a 1 hour play they were doing in the afternoon, which is an adaptation of a little book in a series that it was a sort of comic character called Twink, and that was. Now I'm doing it, and it was on in the afternoon. So I wrote this piece of music and I sent it on tape, and Max was very happy with that. And that was just to be played in. And then he got in touch with me in a panic, and he said, "Look, I'm doing a late night review coming over with a company from Trinity College, and we're doing a late night review, and the guy that was going to do the music has just called in sick, and we open in 36 hours time. What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, nothing much." He said, "Well, can you come up to Edinburgh and put the show together musically, and now." So I literally dropped everything, grabbed an electric guitar and an amplifier and 2 shirts, and went off up to Edinburgh, and that got me into the Travis Theatre Club. So we were doing a show called Stewed Irish, which went off round about midnight, maybe 11 p.m. every night, for a fortnight. The first, I think it was the 2 weeks. I think the official festival was only 2 weeks then, and then there was a third week that followed on. But in the course of doing that, the Travis Theatre Club was just stuffed with these ridiculous people. It was run by Jim Haynes, who was the guy that then started the Arts Lab in London about 3 years later. But he'd founded this theatre club with a Scottish artist called Richard DeMarco, who had a gallery in Edinburgh. Was a fine artist, a painter. And so there was a gallery for the paintings, there was a very small restaurant, there was a small bar upstairs. The theatre was 51 seats, and it was called the Travis because the stage was literally a flat area lit by 6 lamps, 6 big Fresnel lamps, that was it. And the audience was a slight rake, so about 30 this side and about 20 this side, and that was it, 51 seats.
And who did you share a dressing room with there?
Well, what happened was, I was staying with Max's company, so right. 13 to a room in Marchmont Road, the usual thing. But I met Viv Stanshall, who was playing with Lindsay Kemp, who's a mime artist, and that was one of the people that I shared a dressing room with. In the transition between shows, I can't remember whether we were on after them or before them. I've got a program somewhere. But Lindsay's company were 4 people. It was Lindsay and his boyfriend Jack Burkett, who worked under the name of the Great Orlando, and this lovely ballet dancer, a full proper on point ballet dancer called Letitia Stanforth, and then this strange pasty faced tall individual who mournfully walked about on stage playing the euphonium and saying things like, "Death is nature's way of telling you to slow down." And then he carried on playing euphonium. It was really strange. And his name was Vivian Stanshall, so that's how I met Viv. And of course, in the bits in between, got to know him really well. And he told me about the bonsais. That was what introduced me to the bonsai dog do. But then the other company that came in and replaced Stewed Irish in the slot that we'd occupied was this very high-powered anarchic theatre group from Liverpool called the Scaffold. So that was how I met them, Roger McGough and Mike McCartney and John Gorman. And then in the afternoons, because of the Liverpool connection, all these other people showed up, including Adrian Henry, Brian Patton, Pete Brown, Spike Hawkins, Heather Holden. We had local poets like Alan Jackson. I mean, I got drawn into that, but they would do performances in the bar upstairs in the afternoons. The whole place was just a hotbed of people doing stuff. It was brilliant.
Do you know, it struck me, reading a lot about, this early part of your life up there. Yeah. It was like the Wild West in a way, wasn't it? Because you were all doing things that had never been done before, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see it in those terms. You did things because you were there, you know, and you had a passion for performance, obviously. And I was going to university somewhere to read law. I mean, that was the thing. In 1965, I didn't know I was going to go to Liverpool University. That decision was taken after I'd done this thing in Edinburgh. I then got home. I'd applied to the University Central Councils for admission for a university place, because I got crappy A-levels because I was doing all this other stuff, and I was never an academic per se. I didn't really drill down and just work hard, and I applied to Hull, and I can't know, various places. I did get offered. Definitely got offered a place at Hull and a place at Liverpool to read law. So I took this out. I thought, I'll go to Liverpool. That's where by then the Beatles had emerged. I mean, they'd emerged 18 months before that, and obviously I was thrilled by that. So I thought I'd go there.